Wonderful. Thanks, Dean. As Dean was saying, my name's Matt. Dean, I think like you, I won't diss your nationality or anything, but I got bit by franchising though. We'll find common ground here, since we just drew border map like lines on the border here. I got bit by franchising a decade ago or so. It's one of those things you wake up one day and you're like, I think all I do is in franchising now. And at the time, I was a supplier in the consulting space to the industry. And over the course of the last 15 years, I've had the privilege and the opportunity to sit at the C-level and do some advisory work with franchisors and kind of see it from the franchisor angle. Like I said, from the supplier angle a bunch. And then in 2016, my wife and I became multi-unit franchisees of a concept here in Indianapolis, and that kind of really originated where Woven came from. Because after seeing, franchising always talks about the three pillars, the three stools, legs that we were, always, suppliers, franchisors, franchisees. And so it was in that moment of becoming a franchisee that kind of really realized or resonated with me that, to your Dean, to the coin term, I think FSN's rolling with now is, employee operations. It kind of brought everything together to say, there's got to be a better way to do what's currently out there, right? Because as a franchisee, you're largely buying a business in a box. And if you've been around franchising for a while, you know how much of a joke that is when people say that, because you still got the people to manage the day-to-day, the locations, the facilities, everything else. So this is why we created Woven. So Woven is a single all-in-one platform, one login, full coverage for all of your people, operations, and facilities. And Dean, to your point earlier when you were doing the introductions, is that this isn't HR, right? So we aren't payroll or benefits or that side of people, right? But it's managing your people, right? All the turnover, the life cycle of those people within your organization. So we wanted to bring all these disparate systems, all these multiple logins into one place to give kind of our version of the three pillars, which is people, operations, facilities, to help those franchisee organizations run smoother operations. So again, out of all my experience within the franchising space, I really got attached. I mean, I'm a tech guy behind the scenes and I'm a big nerd. I always loved franchising for many reasons. One of them, though, is just like somebody a decade ago introduced me to unit economics. And I was like, what's that? That sounds cool. And then you dig into it. And it's just, it was something that really caught my attention and just it kind of become obsessed with from the operational side of things. Like, how do you really maximize those unit economics of whatever system you're in, whatever you're trying to scale out, right? And how do you do that through bringing your workforce together and really streamlining that day to day so that you can do more with these geographically dispersed, isolated teams of people that work in all these different locations spread out across states and countries, et cetera. So that's, sorry, long introduction. That's what Woven does, right? Woven consolidates typically 5 to 6 other pieces of software, or honestly, what we come across a lot is a lot of really old school tactics. So emails, spreadsheets, things like that. So
Matt, sorry, I don't want to stop your flow here. So I'm looking at a boatload of platforms, like, on communications alone. And having worked in franchising, I know a lot of the companies that use a lot of this, or a lot of these platforms. So are you replacing all of these with one platform, or is it kind of like a la carte? You're replacing a few of them. Like how does it work, or what's the goal here?
Yeah, for sure. So Woven's actually a replacement. We're not like a single sign-on or some kind of integration where you can log in one place and you still have to maintain all these other vendors. And again, I say this with all sincerity, like all these tools that I think are on this slide are not bad companies. They're actually great tools in their own right. I think though that there's the one thing that the franchise industry, right? And if you're a franchisee trying to scale multi-unit to multi-unit success, you running into is that their siloed nature, having all these different point solutions to do all these different things, right, starts adding that friction and that negative impact on your ability, on your business's ability to scale across not only your core business, but your managers to be able to train and get them up to speed, and also your employees, right? You want to bring in employees and just get them going. So, if you think about it from those three levels and you look at it from the organization level, right? These are this many different vendor relationships you have to maintain. You have to administer all these systems and keep data in sync. And if you open a new location or you buy or acquire some or whatever it is, you have to then go through all this manual setup and all these different systems. And so when you're consolidating, you have fewer systems to administer, fewer vendors. There's a lot of training benefit out of this, right? So your franchisees shouldn't be constantly fighting administrative trivial battles, which, Dean, I got that saying from a Canadian. I'll give you some credit there.
Thanks.
So we always use this term administrivial, right? It's all this administrative trivial work that we try to lift off of managers and the franchisee businesses. But it all leads to more accountability and efficiency, right? The more that organization can bring into one place, create visibility, reduce the friction and the drag that the managers and the employees have to do. It's just increasing that velocity that they can continue to move at. And then you take the managers, right? Probably one of the more important employee positions within any multi-unit franchise organization. And they're the typically most expensive to acquire and train and get up to speed. They have the most responsibilities. Depending on the concept, these people are responsible for $500,000 or $2 or $3 or $4 million investment, right? They're responsible for this facility and everything that goes on there. And so, eliminating that all that administrative trivial work from their plate so they can focus on their team, coaching, training, development, really increases the business's ROI out of that higher dollar person, right? Otherwise, you're paying somebody a salary typically that is spending all their time doing an administrative task and not really adding value to your investment, right? They're not working the business, they're not growing it, et cetera. And then lastly, employees, right? I mean, less friction just equates to happier employees, right? I think you guys were just talking about it earlier on how the second that the generations coming into the workforce, the millennials and the Gen Xers or Zers, sorry, the second they receive any kind of technology friction, they're out, right? This I don't like this anymore. Dean, you just gave an example of your son. I'm out, I'm done, right? And so when they're working their part-time or just hourly gig, they don't want to have to learn 6 different logins to work their front desk somewhere, right? They don't want to have to learn all these different systems and things like that. So by bringing it all into one login, one place, you're quicker to train them, more satisfying work, et cetera. So now, I actually have if you don't mind, I'm gonna Dean, if you don't have any other questions, I'm actually gonna share a case study if that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we actually we were super lucky. We did a time study with a multi-unit, multi-brand organization called Glow Brands. They are the franchisor for Suntan City, and then they are franchisees for Planet Fitness and Buff City Soaps. So they go across, they have salon and spa, gym and fitness, and then retail. So this is actually a multi-unit, multi-brand organization that goes across multiple verticals as well. And so we did a time study with this group across their 3 different concepts. They have I think they're just right around 200 locations, or I think the slide, just under 200 locations. And we went in and worked with their DMs and their managers, and we did this time study to figure out like, what is that actually, right? Because they loved Woven, they were all in, they felt it was great. But through the time study, we found out that they were actually able to save and or reallocate more than $1 million a year. And this is recurring, right? Just from lifting off all this burdensome stuff that they were otherwise, having to put their teams through. And not to mention the savings from consolidating their tech stack and the administration upstream from that doesn't include that, but just from realizing the amount of time and the hours saved for their management, club managers, district managers, et cetera, was north of $1 million, which is, needless to say, you could look at that another way, is that they were burning $1 million a year in inefficiencies prior. So there really is there's a hidden small soapbox here really quick, because, again, being a nerd, I focused in the tech stack on the operational side of things, which, isn't glamorous. You got marketing tech stacks that are awesome and all shiny and people love them. And you have point of sale systems, which nobody loves their point of sale system, but it's a necessity. So it still gets a lot of attention and it's cool. And nobody's like, hey, what we really need is a really cool incident tracking tool. Like, nobody's thinking about that, right? It's like, there's some PDF somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I typically just email in some notes, right? So when we really decided to focus in on this area, it's like lifting up the rug in your house, right? Just all that stuff's been swept underneath it. But once you clean that out, right, there's a lot of value to bringing all that stuff out of the surface, bringing efficiency to it. And it's all these small little time leaks throughout your organization that can be, rolled together and strengthened.
Yeah, you could definitely see how, obviously, being a multi-unit owner and multi-brand owner, as soon as you invest, if you're a franchisee, you invest into that brand and start opening up. Each one's going to have their own platforms and POS systems and everything else that they have. So, like you said, if you're a district manager that you've got to float between all these locations, you've now got to learn all these different logins, have all these different apps or whatever the case is, and be able to pull all this information. So you can definitely see the value there, and how they were, like you said, burning $1 million a year in, just time wasted, just either waiting, trying to find logins, trying to access an app, whatever the case is. So yeah, great value. Sorry, I wanted to go back on the previous slide. You don't have to go back to the slide, but just a quick question on that. Plus, this is a great shock value for people to see. So what happens if you're a franchisee, and obviously there's certain platforms that are mandated, right, by the franchisor that you have to use? Obviously, like a POS system is one of them, right? You have to use this POS system, although there are brands that don't really mandate, and they've got early franchisees that are able to do whatever they want. Do you have an open API or an API that you can work with existing systems that a franchisee cannot replace, that they can work and work with?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, to answer the question directly is, it's 2023 now, right? Like, we have a full open API, webhooks, the whole 9 yards. We're very technology forward in the sense that we don't live in a bubble, right? We live in an ecosystem. So yeah, absolutely. We are not a point of sale. We are not HR, payroll, benefits, right? But we do fit in that space, and we're not marketing either. We don't talk to our customers, right? We're not going out there in the world. So we really truly just sit between, that payroll, point of sale, and marketing tool set, and just kind of consolidate everything in between. Okay. Now, what I would say, Dean, is that we've never walked into a system that's a blank slate, right? Every franchise system at any level of development has something, right? Even if it's a wild collection of Excel spreadsheets and PDF forms, or 4 or 5 or 6, 7, 8 different SaaS products, there's always stuff in place, and depending on the brand and and the people in the brand, right? There's either attachments to certain systems that are untouchable, or everything can go. And so we built Woven in a way to respect that. Again, coming out of the franchise industry for 15 years now, we saw that time and time again in our consulting work, is that there's just immovable pieces within environments sometimes. It's not always the point of sale, although the point of sale is a very common one. So we looked at it from the perspective of saying, yes, Woven offers all this stuff. We have full-blown communications and scheduling and facility and equipment management, location tracking and operational tools and surveys and audits and everything else, right? And so, but you can turn on one feature or all 30 plus of our features, or somewhere in between. We built the tool to be very flexible to fit what the organization needs, right? If you only need communications, then great. Like, we are a great communication tool, compete very well against our peers in their space. You just need an auditing tool, or maybe you need both. Like, we're flexible to meet the need, and then we can always do more later if there is a desire to say, hey, great, let's start bringing more in as agreements and things like that. We do that quite frequently.
Cool. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt again.
No, you're right. It's a great question. One last thing to jump back ahead here is that that's a lot of, franchisee specific value, and in a lot of our tool set actually is focused on the tactical operations side of things. It's where we started in our decade-long roadmap when we created Woven initially. We knew that we needed to get the eyeballs, we needed to get the engagement of the managers and the low-level employees. That's where the data originates. And we need that engagement in order to drive some future stuff for us, which we have started implementing now. So if you'll amuse me, I have this fun thing, and Dean, I think this will resonate with you, anybody in franchising typically. So I joked earlier about the business in a box concept. And so we're all familiar with the fact that as a franchise system, the franchisor is responsible for the brand, general strategy pieces, certain key elements. And then they have a legal relationship with their franchisees, owners, and they exchange information, right? And the beauty of today's world is, at least in the US, we have this wonderful joint employer concept.
Oh yeah.
Which is like this toxic line that a lot of franchisors don't want to cross, reasonably so. And so there's this like complete lack of visibility after they've tossed the stuff over to the wall via whatever portal system they're using, and they say, hey, go ahead and check out this new rollout guide for this new upcoming whatever it is, or this announcement, or this new compliance thing. And the good owners, it's always a third. The top third will send it out, the middle third's hit and miss, and the bottom third of your system's just not going to do anything with it. And then, of course, once it hits to their managers, then it's kind of like it gets chunked up, and some people print it, and some people put it on the desktop of the front office computer, and some people will email it out, and some people will text it, and God knows how it gets out to your employees. Point though is that for the franchisor, looking at this from the franchisor standpoint, by not standardizing the operation tools within their stack, by allowing franchisees to just do whatever they want, right? The employees at the end of the day are getting nothing like what the brand actually wants them to get, and or in a reasonable amount of time. And so the franchisor implements all these wonderful audit tools and compliance checks, and we're going to do a quarterly and annual review, and we're going to slap you with the default ruler if we find you're out of compliance. But again, they're getting 2, 3, 4. If they're really aggressive, they're getting 6 to 12 different data points per year to see how they're actually doing. And I think for me, this is going down to maximizing unit economics and bringing this all home, right? Is the fact that you are in franchising because there is a repeatable system that works. You're buying into the brand equity that's been created for you. And so to maximize your investment in that brand, everybody has to be rowing the boat the same way. There has to be consistency, compliance to that consistency. That brand experience has to be delivered every time the same way. And who's delivering that, right? Your franchisee isn't delivering that. The people working the front desk, those frontline employees are the brand to your consumer, to the ones that matter, right? And yet they're the ones that aren't getting what they need in a reasonable amount of time, or even getting it in a way that, if they get it at all, by the way, right, to actually deliver on that brand. So with Woven, what we've done is we've taken this and we've wrapped Woven around this entire equation. There's still the joint employer line. We still control data visibility. We still protect the brands from all that fun stuff, but everything flows from franchisor all the way down to frontline employees in one place. And then what we can do is drive back real-time, anonymous aggregated data, so the franchisor can actually see what's going on without directly influencing the employees. So we're still respecting that joint employer issue and topic, while at the same time providing a real-time feedback loop to the franchisor to hold their franchisees accountable. So no more, I think, Nick, you had mentioned hiring massage therapists, and that's, we happen to be a franchisee of a concept in that space. And so hiring massage therapists hits close to home. It's an incredibly difficult feat. There's not enough of them, et cetera. But in that space, in that salon spa space, right? You take one of these items like compliance up at the top there. Franchisors have to maintain very strict compliance on rules within that space because there's massive liability for the brand if they don't, right? There's a lot of brand damage and brand image damage that can be done if you have just a single franchisee that's out of compliance, that isn't running background checks, that isn't taking their guests' safety seriously. So through Woven, we're able to give these brands real-time feedback loops, not quarterly check-ins or once or twice a year kind of compliance review stuff. We're giving them real-time, every franchisee, every location, how many employees do they have? 6 are eligible for background checks, 5 are done, 1's been expired, right? And they can get that and take action on it right away, right? They no longer need to wait. And so and I could do the same thing for policies and procedures and communications, but I mean, the compliance is one right now that, there's a lot of liability, game ending liability for both franchisees and franchisors with that. And so it just makes sense that you're looking at the velocity at which you can get that data to protect not only the brand, but every franchisee's investment in that as well. So anyways, that's what I got for you. Any questions?
Yeah, so I agree with you on the joint employer side. There's it's a big gray area for a lot of franchisors, and there's a lot of fear there, right? They shy away from either implementing technologies or processes even to be able to look at, you use the example perfect is compliance, right? If you are a massage concept and a brand, you got to make sure you're maintaining compliance and certifications and whatever the case is, because if you're advertising that you have a proper, RMT that has the whatever the case is, certifications, and they have all the right health and safety regulations, and they follow them all, but then you have a location that's not following that, as a franchisor, you need to make sure you maintain that. And you need to understand that. But a lot of franchisors, as you said, shy away from it because they're like, well, we don't want to get down to the employee level, but technically you're not, because you're just communicating with the franchisee to say, hey,
Right.
You have 4 RMTs that haven't gone back and gotten recertified or gotten retrained since it's been 18 months. Like, they have to go back, or whatever the
Yep.
case is. So I think that's great. And, if you could remove that fear from it, then I think more franchisors will become comfortable in implementing, those types of technologies.
Yep.
So obviously, you're looking at, a platform like yours can float, in any really industry per se within franchising. But is there one that like you touched upon the compliance side. So now immediately my mind's racing for anybody that has any type of skilled set worker or certified worker that has to go through a specialty of some kind. Obviously there's a strong play there, but you could potentially float in anything, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, currently we're across, salon, spa, gym, fitness. Those are our 2 strengths because that's where we kind of grew out of. So, from the salon spa space, simply because I originally started building Woven to help my wife, and then it took off from there. And so, we have I have a soft spot in my heart for the salon and spa space, only because it's the space that Woven got created in. So it is a lot of licensure, compliance type stuff. It is heavy in that space, but gym and fitness also, while not as heavy in the compliance and employee side, very heavy in the equipment and facility side. All right. So we have a full blown asset facility management module built right in. Really helps with your employees in what's called like a see something, say something. Often a lot of gyms suffer from the fact that equipment will be down longer than necessary, only because the hourly employee doesn't know where to go to report it. By bringing it all into Woven in one place, all their communications, their surveys, everything that they're doing day to day, as well as submitting a new work order or checking in on the status of a part being ordered, is all in one place. And so it really reduces the friction of actually collecting that data. So that'd be our 2 primaries, but we're also across the QSR space, car wash, retail, janitorial and cleaning. So, I mean, yeah, so diverse in terms of the industry segment. We haven't really found an industry segment yet that we haven't been able to work with.
Right. Excellent. And just for proper reference purposes, where are you based out of?
Physically in Indianapolis.
There you go. And Woven is based out of?
Well,
Indiana?
sure. Here we got about half of our team is here in Indy. We do have a couple Canadians. Just give you a shout out, and then a few others spread across.
Well, this is it's been great. I appreciate you guys definitely taking the time to speak with us. It was actually interesting. Before I jumped on the call, I was just reading a report from someone that in 2000, this is some food for thought. So in 2022, part-time hourly employee churn rate 85%. And store manager, assistant manager churn rates 23%. And the cost.
They were reading the same study. Yeah, it's like 1.1 trillion or something.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's insane. And then cost of onboarding new employees anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000, depending on the role and the program that you set up, right? So, you know, you're working with 2 ladders, depending on what you're going to be setting up and how you're going to do it. That can cost you anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, and that's just an industry average, right? So, it's insane. So, you know, with what you guys do and then around the employee operations, it was something that just grew organically for FSN. We were, you know, as you guys know what we do, we're looking at suppliers and bringing them onto the community. And I just started looking. I was like, hey, they do this, they do that. And then this all kind of revolves around the whole thing. And it's obviously a massive pain point. So it's something that I think is going to be ongoing for the next, you know, 3, 5, hopefully not longer, but if it is, it is. 3 to 5 years for sure, that franchisees are going to be feeling